Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're here to break down the quarterbacks for Week 2 NFL slate. I cannot believe we're already into Week 2, but here we are. I already got my Thursday Night Football video up, so if you want to go check that out, if you're watching this before Thursday, you should go ahead and check that video out as well. If you're new to this channel, make sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, turn on the notification bell so you can know when all my stuff comes out. All that stuff really helps me grow. Had a lot of growth throughout NASCAR and NBA season. Now we've got a lot of growth throughout NFL season. If you want to subscribe to my Patreon, I will put the link in the description below. For only $10 a month, you are going to get articles for every single position, articles for every single position every single week, along with an article for all of the main showdown slates. So Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night football showdown. You're going to get all my rankings for every single position. You're going to get my cash rings. You're going to get my top stacks. You're going to get all my injury notes. And you'll know who to play when someone's out, all this stuff. So be sure to go ahead and check that out. I'll put the link in the description below. If you want to follow me on social media, Twitter's at DFSNateLane, Instagram's at @NateLane_. I'll put the link down there for that as well. But we got a lot to get into on this video, so let's just go ahead and dive right in. Lamar Jackson, $8,200. We'll start out with. Lamar balled out against Cleveland last week, and now he's got just an absolute favorable matchup against Houston. When we go look at the offensive line versus defensive line matchup, it's a positive matchup for the offensive line. Not ridiculously positive, but it is a nice little positive matchup for the offensive line for Baltimore. The wide receivers for Baltimore, it looks like Marquise Brown's going to start at wide receiver 1, Miles Boykin number 2, and Snead in the slot. Going against Bradley Roby, Vernon Hargreaves, and John Reed in the slot. It's just such a favorable matchup for them. Bradley Roby's pretty solid, but then after that, Vernon Hargreaves, and if we get some Lonnie Johnson too, man, these guys just aren't good. I'm loving Marquise Brown this week. We'll talk about him more in the receivers video, but just the receivers do look favorable. And then you have Mark Andrews, of course, his favorite target. The linebackers he's got to go up against are Bernardrick McKinney, Michael Thomas, Zach Cunningham. Grades out positively there as well. And then Eric Murray and Justin Reed are his safeties against the receivers. That actually grades out slightly negatively because Justin Reed's pretty good. But overall, this is one of the best matchups on the slate. This is one of the best overall matchups on the slate, in my opinion, for at quarterback. Not the best. We'll get into some of the best ones, but this is a very good matchup. Someone that I think could be an interesting stack that's not going to be too highly owned. They are favored, and this is the second highest total game on the slate as well, so we expect a lot of scoring in this game. They are favored, so maybe a little bit more running than we would like. We saw, the Lamar stack was working pretty well until the second half when all they did was run the ball pretty much when they didn't need to pass in Europe, killing Cleveland. And last year we saw the Ravens just absolutely destroy Houston in the regular season, and Houston's worse this year, so I wouldn't be surprised if that happens again. I don't think they'll, lose 40-10 like it was last year, but still. Lamar definitely someone I have my eye on. Not going to go there for cash, never going to go there for cash, but definite GPP play this week, so definitely liking some Lamar. Shaun Watson up next at 6,400. They're facing off on the opposite side of this game against the Ravens. When we go look at the offensive line versus defensive line matchup, this actually is a pretty positive matchup for the offensive line for Shaun Watson. But the receivers, they got Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, and Randall Cobb in the slot. But then the matchups on the corners, man. Marcus Peters, Jimmy Smith, Marlon Humphrey. Man, that's a tough one. It's a negative matchup for the wide receivers versus the corners. It's one of the best secondaries in the entire league. We know Marlon Humphrey's a shutdown slot corner, and we know Marcus Peters is a very, very good outside corner as well, and then Jimmy Smith's solid. So the receivers are solid, but this is just not a really great matchup for them. Then we have Jordan Akins, who looks like he's going to be the tight end of this season for them. Patrick Queen, Willie Harrison, LJ Ford are the linebackers, so it grades out as a negative matchup for Jordan Akins. And then Chuck Clark and Deshaun Elliott in the safeties is also going to grade out as a negative matchup for the wide receivers. Overall, negative matchup for Deshaun Watson, but they are going to be playing from behind. We saw Deshaun Watson suck against Kansas City last week until the fourth quarter when he salvaged it. This is just a tougher matchup for him overall. I don't really know how much I want to get to Deshaun Watson this week. He is playing from behind. He is Deshaun Watson. He is relatively cheap for what Deshaun Watson's ceiling is, but probably just not somewhere I really want to go this week. There's just better options, even in that price range that we'll get to. But Deshaun's fine. He's not going to be too highly owned, but if you want to if I were playing Deshaun, I'd probably make a stack of him with 4, maybe or Cooks, one of those two. But I wouldn't go both of them. I just don't think they score a ton of points. So not too high on Deshaun Watson this week. Patrick Mahomes, 7,700, which is actually kind of cheap for Mahomes. So we usually get him at 8K. Going against the LA Chargers, we go look at the offensive line versus defensive line matchup. It's a pretty positive matchup for the offensive line with the Kansas City Chiefs, even going up against that pretty solid defensive line in LA. But still, When we go look at the wide receivers, we had Tyreek Hill playing majority of the slot last time, so I moved him to slot receiver. So Sammy Watkins on the outside, Demarcus Robinson on the outside, and Tyreek Hill in the slot. We've seen a matchup against their corners. The secondary is very, very good in the LA Chargers as well. Casey Hayward Jr., Michael Davis, and Chris Harris Jr., one of the best slot corners of the past decade. And Casey Hayward is one of the best overall corners of the past decade, according to PFF as well. So this does grade out as just a barely positive matchup against those corners, in LA. So, I mean, it's not a bad, terrible matchup. It's just not anything too special. Travis Kelce is a tight end going against Kenneth Murray, Denzel Perryman. Actually, Drew Tranquil got hurt, so we're going to have to take him out. He's out for a season, I believe. I think he tore his fibula or tibula or something like that. So I thought that was a bone. I'm not going to get into doctor stuff. Desmond King at safety, Rayshawn Jenkins at safety. That's going to grade out as a slightly positive matchup. And, I mean, Patrick Mahomes grades out positively, but nothing, massive. And, I mean, I just don't want to – I don't know if this is the spot I want to go to. It's a 47.5 line, which isn't bad. It's, middle of the pack this week. But we saw the Chargers last week. They're a good defense. They just play very, very slow. I just don't expect, Mahomes to really get out there. I mean, the receivers do have some tough matchups. If there's one spot I want to get to on this team, we'll talk about it in the running back videos, which I'm going to be recording a little bit after this, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But for the most part, I mean, I just don't think this is the spot to get to Mahomes this week. I mean, it's just a slow matchup, not the best matchup. He's expensive. I'd rather get to other stacks. There's a lot of good stack options this week, and I just don't know if Mahomes is really the one with the ceiling. I mean, well, that's not true. Mahomes always has a ceiling. I just don't think this is the game where he really hits it. So, not the place for me to go for Patrick Mahomes this week. I mean, of course, we won't play him in cash. He's too expensive. If you're playing just fantasy football in general, just play Patrick Mahomes always, unless for some reason you have both him and Lamar. But, yeah, I mean, Mahomes, just probably not the place I want to go to this week. Josh Allen going against the Miami Dolphins. At $6,700, had a great game against the Jets. And now he's $6,700. This is the most expensive I've ever seen Josh Allen. Hoping for a big year from him. Really big fan of his. When we go look at the offensive line versus defensive line matchup, it is a positive matchup for the Buffalo Bills offensive line. The wide receivers in Buffalo are Stephon Diggs, John Brown, and Cole Beasley in the slot. They're going to be going up against Byron Jones, Xavier Howard, and Jamal Perry in the slot as a slot corner. Overall, it's a very, very positive matchup for these receivers against these corners. We haven't seen Xavier Howard really be too great any time recently. I mean, Byron Jones is good, but then in the slot, Cole Beasley's got a big advantage. So a big-time offensive versus defensive matchup overall for the Buffalo Bills here. Dawson Knox in the tight end, really not someone who's going to get utilized a lot in the offense, not someone I really worry too much about. Then Eric Rowe and Bobby McCain in the safeties, for, why did I almost say Philly? For Miami. That grades out as a positive matchup. Overall, just a huge positive matchup for Buffalo. One thing I will say about Josh Allen this week is it's one of the lower, I think it is the lowest total game on the slate. I think 41 is the lowest, right? Yeah. 41's the lowest game total on the slate. So I think Buffalo's going to be in a lot of these this year, and they're pretty big favorites over Miami. I mean, it's a good defense, but I think Josh Allen, this is the kind of spot where you'd be like, okay, he's a really good cash play, but he's too expensive for that. So it's going to be hard for me to really justify getting there this week. I mean, obviously when I talk about my top stacks video, we'll see if Josh Allen's in there, and I'll see if I use him that much, but probably not the most favorable spot for me this week. I think there's better places to go than Josh Allen. Just because I think there's spots with more upside. I think Josh Allen, and we know he does have the rushing upside. He's good. He's got some good matchups here, but the line is the smallest and the lowest on the slate, and they're going to be playing from ahead. This is probably just not the spot to really attack on him, but I think he's safe. He's a safe play for me. If you wanted to play him in GVPs, that's fine. I just don't know if he has tournament winning upside this week. Next we got Sam Darnold. They're going against the 49ers. I mean, I think that's really all I really need to say. I don't really have to get into much more of this, but I will about why we don't want to play Sam Darnold here. I mean, I know Kyler tore him up last week. Offensive line versus defensive line, negative matchup. I mean, we know that defensive line for the Niners is absolutely insane. The wide receivers for the Jets right now are Rashad Perriman, Chris Hogan, and Jamison Crowder. I don't expect Denzel Mims to be back this week. If he is, he'll start instead of Hogan, which is an upgrade, I assume. He's a rookie, but he's a pretty good rookie. Then the corners are Richard Sherman, Emmanuel Mosley, and Kwan Williams. It's another one of the best secondaries in the league. That's going to be a brutal matchup for those receivers. Chris Herndon in the tight end going against Fred Warner, Quan Alexander, and Drake Greenlaw. That's also going to be a very negative matchup. That's just a great linebacking group. And then Jaquiski Tart and Jimmy Ward in the two safeties, and another negative matchup. And just overall, a completely negative matchup for Darnold. They're going to be playing from behind, but I just don't think that offensive line is going to hold up. I don't think that their receivers are going to be able to do anything against these corners. So Sam Darnold, probably not someone I really want to go to. One of the lower total games on the slate as well. Just not the pick for me this week. I think he is very cheap if you want to take a risk. And hopefully he's going to stay cheap when he starts getting some better matchups. But this is just not the spot. I mean, we've seen him have to go up against Buffalo and San Francisco to start the season, probably 2 of the top 5 defenses in the NFL. So, just probably not the spot for me for Darnold this week. I'm just going to go to Ryan Fitzpatrick going against Buffalo. Only $5,200. He's pretty cheap as well, and we know Fitzpatrick always has the upside. With the offensive line, defensive line matchup, it's going to be a pretty negative matchup for the Miami offensive line. Buffalo, we all know, is pretty solid defensive line. Nothing like crazy good, but they're pretty solid. When we go look at the wide receivers for Ryan Fitzpatrick, he has Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, and Jakeem Grant in the slot. They're going to be going up against Tre'Davious White, Levi Wallace, and Teron Johnson. That's just some tougher matchups for them. They do barely grade out positively, but the Devontae Parker, Tre'Davious White matchup I really don't want to attack at all. If I'm going to make a stack of Fitzpatrick, it's going to be either with Gesicki or Preston Williams this week. I think Preston Williams does have a pretty favorable matchup on the outside against Levi Wallace. Mike Gesicki's a tight end, going against Tremaine Edmonds, AJ Klein, and Matt Milano. He grades out slightly negatively, but nothing really too much to worry about. And Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyder, the 2 safeties. That's grades out as a negative matchup for those receivers. And just overall a slightly negative matchup for Fitzpatrick. Just probably not a spot I want to go to. I mean, they are going to be playing from behind, but again, this is the lowest total game in the slate. So I just don't think this is really a spot to really attack Ryan Fitzpatrick. I really hope we get a Ryan Fitzpatrick week before Tua comes in, because I just love playing Fitzpatrick every week whenever I get the chance. So hopefully we get a good matchup from him soon. I honestly don't even know who they play in the next week or two, so I haven't looked that far ahead. But it's just probably not a spot really to get to him. Drew Lock going against Pittsburgh. Again, I mean, just another team where, we've had 3 of the best defensive teams in a row in the last 3 quarterbacks we talked about. Just what's going to happen. When we go look at the offensive line versus defensive line matchup, I believe this is the worst one. Nope, the Vikings is worse. Okay, so the second worst matchup on the slate for an offensive line is the Denver Broncos. So that's scary. Cortland Sutton didn't play last game, and I'm not too hopeful that he's going to play this week either. I mean, especially going against Pittsburgh, I just don't know. So I have him out right now, so that means leaves Tim Patrick as the wide receiver 1, Deshaun Hamilton as the wide receiver 2, and then Jerry Jeudy in the slot. Then we have Joe Hayden, Steven Nelson, Mike Hilton guarding them. It's going to be a very negative matchup for those wide receivers. Then we have Noah Fant in the tight end spot going against Vince Williams and Devin Bush. Another big-time negative matchup. Noah Fant's going to be great. He looked great on Monday night, but just not really surprising the matchup. I mean, we saw Pittsburgh just absolutely shut down Ingram as a tight end. I just expect that to happen again. They're very similar tight ends. Terrell Edmonds, Minka Fitzpatrick are the 2 safeties. And that's another negative matchup. And this overall makes Drew Lock the worst matchup on the slate for me against Pittsburgh. I hate no Cortland Sutton's huge. The offensive line versus defensive line's horrible. I mean, those are the 2. If your receivers are in bad spots and your offensive line's in a terrible spot, I just don't want to play you. They are playing from behind, but Drew Lock's pretty much in a void for me this week. I don't think he has a ceiling most nights anyway, so just especially against someone like Pittsburgh, probably not the spot I want to get to. Ryan Tannehill going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. We are really going to talk about who we want to attack Jacksonville with in the next video that's coming out later on today. But the offensive line versus defensive line matchup, he's only $5,900, so that's a good, pretty cheap price. Offense versus defensive line matchup, very positive for the Tennessee Titans here. He has A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, and Adam Humphries, and we know A.J. Brown had a rough game against Denver, but he still got targeted 8 times. In the fourth quarter, they were targeting him a lot more than they were early on in the game. They were trying to get him the ball, but Corey Davis was utilized. So these 2, sneaky upside here with those 2. We go look at their cornerback matchups. They're going up against Trey Herndon, C.J. Henderson, D.J. Hayden. The rookie C.J. Henderson, looked great in Week 1 against the Colts. We'll see what he can do if he's going up against A.J. Brown. Who's going up against A.J. Brown or Corey Davis if he can repeat, but he looked great. But overall, still going to be a very positive matchup a positive matchup for the wide receivers in Tennessee. We got Jonnu Smith as a tight end going against Joe Schobert, Myles Jack, Leon Jacobs. That's going to be a positive matchup for Ryan Tannehill as well. Then the safeties are Josh Jones and Andrew Wingard. And it's just going to be a very positive matchup for Tannehill. Looks like a very positive spot. They are favored, and they are a lower total at 43. So, again, probably not a major stack option for me this week. I mean, I think Tannehill's going to cash. I think Tannehill is going to be a low-owned stack option that could pay off, but at the moment, not one of my favorite spots to go to. I mean, we'll see how the week goes on, what happens. Players get ruled out. Stuff can happen. If it's just going to be no ownership at all, then yeah, maybe get some few lineups in on that. But for the most part, probably not the spot I really want to attack too much. But I think it's a good cash play, and I think I don't hate him for tournaments, just not my favorite. Up next, we're going to go to Matt Ryan of the Atlanta Falcons, facing off against Dallas Cowboys. $6,600 for Matt Ryan. Yeah, that's kind of expensive. When we go look at the offensive versus defensive line, we're going to go see a slightly positive matchup for the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, it's a good match. It's a solid matchup. Just the Atlanta offense line's not what it used to be. It used to be like one of the best in the league, and it's just fallen off the past few years. Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and Russell Gage in the slot are the receivers, going against Trayvon Diggs, Chidobe Awuzie, and Anthony Brown. This is where the nice little matchup comes for Atlanta. Those corners are not anything compared to Julio and Ridley. I mean, we saw Ridley just go off last week against Seattle, and now he's going to get to go up against either rookie Trayvon Diggs or Chidobe Awuzie. Give me that all day. And same with Julio, man. If Julio gets rookie Diggs, gosh, this could be Mount St. Julio week, and I'm really excited just to watch this game. I think this is going to be a really high-scoring game, and I'm really looking forward to this game. Hayden Hurst going against, I think Leighton Vander Esch is out, so we'll have to change that, but overall, it's a slightly positive matchup. It's going to be more positive when Leighton Vander Esch is out of there. Darian Thompson and Xavier Woods are the safeties. That's a positive matchup for the receivers. And it's not a super positive matchup for Atlanta, but it's still a positive matchup, and this is the highest total game on the slate at 52.5. So Matt Ryan has the ability to just go absolutely nuts here. It's going to be a game. There's going to be a ton of scoring. Not really two not so great defenses, two very good offenses. So I think Matt Ryan could put up some big numbers. Definitely one of my favorite stack options on this week. Love the matchup. Love the total. Especially when you start really liking the wide receivers, that's when I start liking the quarterback a lot. That's usually what I say. And I really like the wide receivers in Atlanta this week. So, yeah, Matt Ryan looks like one of my favorite tournament plays at the quarterback position. Up next, we got Mitchell Trubisky going up against the New York Giants. And Mitch Trubisky had a good game last week. I mean, he was terrible until the fourth quarter, but in the fourth quarter, he really turned it on. So at $5,500, he might be someone to attack again. The New York Giants secondary sucks. We'll get into that. But offensive versus defensive line, it is going to be a slightly positive matchup for the offensive line. Then we have Allen Robinson, Ted Ginn, and Anthony Miller in the slot. Now, okay, Allen Robinson there's been, drama, especially yesterday with that, where I guess he deleted all his Bears stuff on social media. I don't know. He apparently he wants to be traded out, so we're gonna see how that goes on the rest of this week. But for now, I don't really want to get into that as much. So for now, I'm just gonna act like Allen Robinson's playing because I think he's not getting traded this week, and I'd be surprised they just bench him. So I'm just gonna act like Allen Robinson's playing because I think that's what we should do. I mean, that's really more, honestly, Allen Robinson being out, I guess it's important for Trubisky. May not want to stack him as much anymore, but it's really more important for Anthony Miller. We'll talk about that in the receiver video tomorrow. James Bradbury, Corey Ballantyne, Darnay Holmes are the corners. That's where the matchup is. This is the second best wide receiver matchup on the slate for me. Overall receivers matchup is the Chicago Bears. Giants just secondary is just horrible. It's so bad. I mean, it's just bad. They can't cover. They got torched by James Washington the other night. And I'm a Giants fan, so I'm always going to be hard on them. But they really are bad. Look at their grades. They grade out terribly. 28.9 coverage grade, 65.4, and then Holmes is a rookie. But, I mean, still. Jimmy Graham at tight end going against Blake Martinez and Devontae Downs. That's not really someone who's going to utilize that much in offense. It actually is a negative matchup for Jimmy Graham in that spot. And then we have Jabril Peppers and Julian Love. That's going to be in the safeties. They aren't as bad as the corners, but they're still pretty bad. It's going to be a positive matchup for the receivers. Overall, nice little positive matchup for Mitchell Trubisky, one of the best on the slate. It is one of the lowest total games on the slate at 42, though, and they are favored, so I'm a little worried there, but I think he's still a good spot. I don't think a lot of people are going to go back to stack him because, again, he's Mitch Trubisky, so I don't hate it. I mean, not one of my favorites, but someone I definitely I'm not opposed to getting some exposure to. Matthew Stafford, $6,200 going up against the Packers. Let me type that in real quick. Okay. Taylor Decker, Joe Dahl, Frank Ragnow, Jonah Jackson, Tyrell Crosby. That's the offensive line. When we go look at the offensive line versus defensive line matchup, it's going to be slightly negative. I mean, Green Bay's got a very good pass rush defensive line. Underrated. Zadarius Smith's good, Preston Smith's good, but Kenny Clark's also very good. They just have some very good guys on that defensive line. Right now, I have Galladay out for Detroit. If Galladay comes back in, obviously that's a huge upgrade because it's Kenny Galladay, but I don't know if he's going to play. So right now, I have him out. So that leaves Marvin Jones, Quintus Cephas, and Danny Amendola in the slot as starting receivers. We saw Cephas get targeted 10 times last game. So, I mean, definitely just not someone, I don't hate going there. It's just, I don't really like the receivers that much. The corners are Jair Alexander, Kevin King, Chandon Sullivan. It's a barely positive matchup against those corners for the receivers. T.J. Hawkins is the tight end. The linebackers for Green Bay are Christian Kirksey, Will Redmond, and Chris Barnes. It's going to be a positive matchup for T.J. Hawkinson. Hawkinson looked really good last week. That was a good stack to have it. Or just playing T.J. Hawkinson was Detroit last week. I mean, he's just he's a very good tight end. He's going to be he's going to be very productive this year, I think. So I really like going to him. We'll talk about him in the tight end video, obviously. Adrian Amos, Darnold Savage are the safeties. This grades out as a slightly negative matchup for Stafford. Now, if Galladay comes back, it's obviously going to be better. It's going to be positive at that point because it's just barely negative. But right now, I mean, even if Galladay comes back, I just don't know how much I want to get there. He had a total of 49 on this game, but this reminds me a lot of the New Orleans-Tampa game last week, where it's projected to be high scoring, but these defenses are better than people give them credit for, so it's not going to be as high scoring as people think. So, especially if Stafford and Rodgers end up being chalky stacks, it might just be something to go away from. But I mean, I still don't hate it. It's still Matthew Stafford. We know Stafford has the upside. Just the matchup isn't as great as I think people give him credit for. Aaron Rodgers at $6,900 going against Detroit on the other side of this game. We go look at the offensive versus defensive line matchup. Very positive matchup. We know Green Bay is one of the best offensive lines in the league. David Bakhtiari is just one of the best offensive tackles or guards, whichever one he is in the entire league. So, just a good offensive versus defensive line matchup for Green Bay. We have Devontae Adams, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and Alan Lazard as the wide receivers. Right now, Jeff Okudah missed last week, so I have him out. Continue to have him out. But if he's in, he'll be the number one corner. Just move Amari Ora, I don't even know how to say that name, out of there. But Desmond Trufant right now is the number one corner, and then Coleman as well in the slot. Overall, positive matchup for the wide receivers. Jay Sternberger's a tight end and doesn't really get utilized that much, so don't gotta worry about him a ton. Tracy Walker, Deron Harmon are the two safeties for Detroit. That's going to be actually a slightly negative matchup. They're two pretty good safeties, underrated safeties in the league. It's a barely positive match for Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers. So that's like the same thing I'm saying. Like, I just don't know how good of a stack this is going to be because I think these defenses are better than people give them credit for. So, of course, Devontae Adams is in play always. If you are going to, I mean, you can make a stack, but it's not like last week in Minnesota where I know I didn't necessarily suggest a stack, but I suggested the receivers. Like, these corners suck in Minnesota. So you need to go after some of these QBs. But I still do. I mean, still Aaron Rodgers. We saw he hit the ceiling last week. Is he going to have a resurgence this year and just have an absolute dominant season? I wouldn't be too surprised. So definitely don't hate him. Just not really my favorite play. Not anything interested for cash either. So Kirk Cousins going against Indianapolis Colts, $5,900. When we go look at the offensive versus defensive line matchup, yeah, it's the worst matchup on the slate. The offensive line for Minnesota is bad. Like, it's just really, really bad. They've lost some players in the offseason. It just does not look good at all. Adam Thielen, OBC Johnson, and Justin Jefferson are in the slot for receivers. The corners for Indianapolis are Rocky Sin, Trash Xavier Rose, and Kenny Moore. That's going to be a very positive matchup for those wide receivers, so we'll see if they can overcome that offensive versus defensive line. Kyle Rudolph's in the tight end spot. Didn't really get too utilized last week. Darius Leonard, Anthony Walker, Bobby Okereke are the linebackers. Slightly negative matchup for Rudolph there. And then Malik Hooker and Kari Willis are the safeties. Positive matchup there. It's going to be an overall pretty positive matchup for Kirk Cousins. They're at 48.5 total. And they're not favored. So, I mean, that's fine. It's just, I mean, how much do you really want to go to Kirk Cousins in a stack? Like, I just don't really, I mean, like, it's not like a bad defense. Like, it's not great, but it's a decent defense, decent secondary. I just don't know how much I really want to go there. If anything, I mean, if I'm going to do a Cousins stack this week, it's literally only to Adam Thielen. I'm not involving OBC Johnson or Justin Jefferson probably. So we'll talk more about that in the top stacks and the receiver video. But, I mean, Cousins is fine. It's just probably not someone I want to get to. I mean, they're going to be playing from behind, but, like, the Colts are a slower-paced team. They're a slower-paced team. So I just don't know how excited I am to really get there. Daniel Jones, I think, is going to be the most underrated stack of the week at $1,500 going to be against the Chicago Bears. When we go look at the offensive versus defensive line matchup, it's surprisingly positive. That offensive line looked completely terrible. Like, I mean, so bad against Pittsburgh. I know Pittsburgh has one of the best defensive lines, if not the best defensive line in the league, but man, I mean, Daniel Jones was like pressured on 56% of his snaps. It was ridiculous, and he still put a 66% completion percentage. Like it, I'm so of the, like and I know I'm a Giants fan, but I've never been high on. I'm the most negative Giants fan you'll ever meet. I always think we suck. I really think if this guy actually got some freaking time, this offense would be one of the best in the NFL. Like, it's very, very good. Anyway, the receivers, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slay, and I put Golden Tate back in the starting lineup. I don't see why he won't play this week. Going against Kyle Fuller, Jalen Johnson, Buster Screen, who are really not good. Like, Kyle Fuller's not good anymore. I don't think people understand he's just not good. Like, he had one really good year, and then he's been bad ever since. I mean, he actually played pretty solid against Detroit last week, but still not really scared at all of Kyle Fuller. And Darius Slayton, man, oh my gosh, he looked really good against Pittsburgh. Is he going to have a breakout? I would be very happy if Darius Slayton has a breakout year this year. Evan Ingram at tight end, going against Roquan Smith and Danny Trevathan. It's going to be actually a positive matchup for Ingram there. And then Tayshaun Gibson Sr. and Eddie Jackson are safeties. Positive matchup for the receivers. So Daniel Jones actually is one of the better matchups on the slate. They're going to be playing from behind. It is a lower total game, but I don't hate it. Like, I mean, I think he's got good matchups. I think he's got some good receivers to use too. I mean, there's 3 legit receivers that you can stack them, and you can stack Saquon Barkley too. I mean, we saw Barkley get like 9 targets last game, so there's legitimate stack options for Daniel Jones. Not someone I like. If I'm only making a few lines, probably want to go there. But if I'm MMing tournaments, I think Daniel Jones is a solid option to get to. Up next, Ben Roethlisberger going against the Denver Broncos, $6,300. We go look at the offensive versus defensive line matchup. It's going to be positive for the Pittsburgh Steelers. His wide receivers are Deontay Johnson, James Washington, and Juju Smith-Schuster in the slot, going against A.J. Bouye, who did get hurt the other game, so we got to be sure if he's going to play. I don't even know if he returned, honestly. Michael Ojemudia and Bryce Callahan, which, you know, that's my fault. We'll fix that for us right now. Okay, never mind. Just ignore that. Eric Ebron, it's a positive matchup for Ben Roethlisberger's receivers. So, Eric Ebron in tight end going against Alexander Johnson, Josie Jewell is a positive matchup. And then Kareem Jackson, Justin Simmons in the safety spots. It's a very negative matchup, actually, for those are 2 very good safeties. Ben Roethlisberger is a slightly positive matchup. This is just a low total game. I don't love the matchups everywhere, so I don't know how excited I am to get there. He's going to be face favored, too, going to be playing from ahead. So Ben Roethlisberger probably not a huge target for me this week. Carson Wentz going against the LA Rams looked horrible last week against Washington. Now, I mean, that could be more because that offensive line was horrible. If they're still all hurt again, like if Lane Johnson's out, we'll go look at the offensive versus defense line matchup. Like, it's slightly positive because this Rams line outside of Aaron Donald sucks, but I'm still like Aaron Donald could just wreck things because he's Aaron Donald. So I'm a little nervous about going to Carson Wentz this week. I'm being completely honest. Deshaun Jackson, Jalen Reagor, Craig Ward in the slot going against Jalen Ramsey, Darius Williams, Troy Hill. It's going to be a slightly positive matchup, not because of Jalen Ramsey, because of the other 2 fools. Zach Ertz at tight end going against Kenny Young, Micah Kaiser, Jordan Fuller, and then Taylor Rapp, John Johnson are the safeties. It's an overall pretty positive matchup, it looks like, for Carson Wentz, but I'm scared of that offensive line, man. I mean, I still have him out. They still grade out positively, but I'm scared of Aaron Donald. He's just going to wreck things, man. I mean, I think Ebukam's underrated as a defensive lineman, too, so this is a spot where I'm more likely to go to the Rams defense, and we just got to wait and see how the offense shakes out this week for Philly. Like, if Lane Johnson returns, okay, fine. I think they're okay then. Much better spot. And then if, of course, Miles Sanders too. That's a big loss as well. But I mean, if those guys come back, I think Carson Wentz is a fine stacking option, but probably not someone I really want to get to. Middle of the pack, in terms of the line on this game, just not something. I mean, they're not favored to be playing from behind, but I don't know, man. It just doesn't feel. I don't know. I don't like the way Philly looked in Week 1 at all. And I mean, I haven't been a very. I've been a proponent this year of Philadelphia not being that good this year, so I'm not too excited about Carson Wentz this week. I don't think he's got a ton. Like, Carson Wentz, like, I mean, he's not like someone who's going to go out there and drop 30 or 40 Draftkings points most of the time, for the most part. So I just don't think this is a spot where he really does it. I mean, it could happen, and we'll see how the week goes. Maybe by the end of the week I'll change my mind, but for now, Carson Wentz just not one of the spots for me. Dwayne Haskins going against Washington actually I think might be a little bit sneaky at $5,100. Go look at the offensive versus defensive line matchup. It's going to be slightly negative, but then you got Terry McLaurin, Dontrell Inman, and Steven Sims Jr. in the slot going against Patrick Peterson, Drake Kirkpatrick, and Byron Murphy. It's going to be a pretty positive matchup for those wide receivers. Logan Thomas looked really good. He got some targets last week going against Devondre Campbell and Jordan Hicks. It's going to be a fairly positive matchup as well. And then the safeties are Chris Banjo and Budda Baker. That is also going to be a positive matchup for the Redskins receivers, or the football team's receivers. Total average. So overall, it's going to be a positive match for Washington. I mean, playing from behind, it's a 47 game total. Like, I don't hate it. I think it's a solid option. Solid player to go to is Dwayne Haskins. Like, I don't think, like, if you want to play Haskins in cash, I think that's fine. Tournaments, oh man, he really has to hit that upside for us to really want to use Dwayne Haskins in tournaments. It's scary, but I mean, I think it could work out. Like, I mean, it's just so cheap where you can make a Dwayne Haskins, Terry McLaurin stack and run it back with Hopkins or Kenny and Drake, and you have still have a ton of money left over. Like, just because I'm saving that money that quarterback, you can fit in some other good players. If Haskins puts up like 25 and gets a touchdown to McLaurin or something, or just even if you stack like Steven Sims or Logan Thomas, anybody, that could really end up paying off. This is a game that could be higher scoring than people think because these defenses are not good. So, I'm not too opposed to Haskins this week. I also said that last week and ended up going away from him by the end of the week. We'll see how things go. But we'll see how I don't think by the end of the week. Phillip Rivers going against the Minnesota Vikings. Did not look good last week against the Jaguars. I think Phillip Rivers is done, man. I mean, I picked the Colts to win this division at the beginning of the season, but they didn't look good. It's going to be the Titans, I think, again. They just did not look good against Jacksonville. I mean, they lost. They shouldn't have lost to the Jaguars in the first place, but that's probably going to be a mistake on my part picking the Colts. I was just thinking that all that talent around him could help him, but didn't look like it last week. We'll see if they can turn it around this week. When we go look at the offensive versus defensive line matchup for the Indianapolis Colts, it's a positive matchup for Phillip Rivers, offensive line. Then you have the receivers, T.Y. Hilton, Michael Pittman Jr., Paris Campbell. That's going up against Cameron Dantzler, Holton Hill, and Mike Hughes, probably the worst secondary in the league at the moment. So and only a slightly positive matchup. Like, his receivers really aren't that good. Campbell looked good last week. Hilton's fading, bro. He's not what he used to be. And, I mean, Michael Pittman Jr. is going to be probably end up being pretty solid. Jack Doyle at tight end going against Eric Kendricks, Anthony Barr, and Eric Wilson. That's a slightly negative matchup for Jack Doyle. Then Anthony Harrison, Harrison Smith in the secondary. This ends up being a pretty negative matchup for Phillip Rivers. And the Minnesota defense really isn't that good. It's just his receivers aren't that good. The only good spot is offense versus defensive line. Everything else is tough. Man, I don't want to play. I don't really ever want to play Phillip Rivers in Draftkings ever anyway. Like, I think I heard a stat last year or over the summer. Just listen to podcasts where I don't think Phillip Rivers like ever scored over 30 points in a fantasy game ever. It was either 30 or 40, and it was just like, wow. I think it had to have been 40. There's no way that guy's never had a fantasy game over 30 points. I would look that up. That's an interesting stat. Probably will after this, to be honest. So, Phillip Rivers don't want to go there this week. Gardner Minshew, the third, going against Tennessee Titans, $1,500. When we go look at the offense versus defensive line matchup, it is going to be a positive matchup for Gardner Minshew. Not too positive, but just a little bit. Then you have DJ Chark starting, Laviska Shenault, and Keelan Cole. Totally different receiver core that were out there for a majority of snaps than I thought would be out there. And if Adoree Jackson's still out, that's going to be a huge bump for DJ Chark. But I think he'll come back. I don't have him in right now, but I'm assuming that Adoree Jackson comes back because I didn't really know I didn't even hear any problems from him all week, and all of a sudden Sunday, Adoree Jackson's out. I'm like, oh, that was surprising. So Malcolm Butler, Jonathan Joseph, Chris Jackson are the corners I have for right now. It's a positive matchup for those receivers. Tyler Eifert going against Rashawn Evans, Will Compton, Jayon Evans. It's going to be a positive matchup for Eifert and Kenny Vaccaro and Kevin Byard and the safeties. So it's going to be a positive matchup for Gardner. They're going to be playing from behind against Tennessee. Problem is, it's just a very low total game. Like, if this was a spot where I think this defense is better than people give them credit for, the total's not that high, it's a slow-paced game, so probably not the place I want to get to. There's going to be a week, it's coming, where I really want to get to Gardner Minshew, and I can't wait for it. So I just don't think this is it. We'll see when they play Houston. But for now, probably not a spot for me for Gardner Minshew. Teddy Bridgewater at only $1,500 going against Tampa. Tampa's defense is better than people think, man. I'm telling you, I've been saying it all summer that this Tampa defense is going to make them good. I mean, they didn't really look that great last week, but I think it's better than people give them credit for it. The defense line is very good. When we go with the offensive versus defense line, it's a negative matchup for Carolina. DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Curtis Samuel are the wide receivers going up against Jamel Dean, Carlton Davis, and Sean Murphy punting. It's a negative matchup for the receivers. Ian Thomas at the tight end going against Devin White and Levante David. The second best tight linebacker in the league, by the way. Terrible matchup for Ian Thomas, and Antoine Winfield, the rookie, and Jordan Whitehead are the safeties. That's going to be a positive matchup, but it's barely positive. That's the only reason this is a positive matchup is the safeties. Like, that's it. And, I mean, they're not favored. They're going to be playing from behind, and it's a decent total, but I don't like this. I don't like the matchup, man. I just don't. I really just think this Tampa defense is better than people want to give them credit for. If you want to go to a Teddy DJ Moore stack, that's fine, and always don't hate throwing in, like, Robbie Anderson, because we know. And we saw him last week against Oakland. He's that deep threat ability every single week. So, I mean, they're okay, but I don't know. I don't really want to get there as much. I just think there's better spots, better upside. Tyrod Taylor, For the LA Chargers going up against this week, the Kansas City Chiefs, only $5,300 for Tyrod Taylor. When we go look at the offensive versus defensive line matchup, it is going to be slightly negative for the LA Chargers. Mike Williams, Jalen Goyton, and Keenan Allen in the slot. Going against Travarius Ward, L'Jarius Sneed, and Tyrann Mathieu. It's going to be a negative matchup for those wide receivers. I mean, it's a pretty solid cornerback group, in all honesty. Hunter Henry at tight end going against Anthony Hitchens, Ben Neiman, and Damian Wilson. Then we got Tyrann Mathieu and Juan Thornhill are the safeties. So, overall, it's going to be a fairly positive matchup. So, I think this is going to be a spot where people are going to want to attack this week because it's Tyrod Taylor's 5,300, and the Chiefs, they're known for their offense. They're not known for having a great defense. The Chiefs' defense is a lot better than people think, and this offense is going to be terrible in LA this year. It's just a disaster. It's such a shame because their defense is so good. But, they're going to be playing from behind. I guess he's okay, but I just don't think he hits that ceiling for a GVP. If you want to play Tyrod Taylor in cash, I think that one's fine. But I think there's still a better, the next quarterback I'm going to talk to, I think is just like the best cash play I've seen in a while at quarterback. And I don't know, man. I just don't think Tyrod Taylor's really the spot here. Defense, the matchup isn't fantastic. The line is fantastic. Yeah, they're going to be playing from behind, and yeah, he's cheap. But for a tournament-winning quarterback, I don't see it being Tyrod Taylor. All right, Kyler Murray, $6,100 for Kyler Murray, who, absolutely torched the 49ers last week. This is a lock for cash, in my opinion. I don't ever, say, oh, a quarterback is a lock for cash. Kyler Murray's as close as it gets to a lock in cash. He's $6,100 going against Washington, who's not good. Yeah, they beat Philly last week, but they're still not that good. We go look at the offensive line is a nice positive matchup against the defensive line. Now, yeah, Chase Young probably going to make that a little bit worse. DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, Larry Fitzgerald going against Fabian Moreau, Ronald Darby, and Jimmy Moreland. This is the best wide receiver matchup on the entire slate for me. This is a Kyler Murray I want in tournaments. I don't just want him in cash. He gives you that floor. He has a ton of rushing upside. We know that. He targeted DeAndre Hopkins 30 times last week. Wasn't that much, but he targeted him a ton. Dan Arnold at tight end going against Kevin Pierre-Louis, John Bostic, Sean Deion Hamilton. That's a negative matchup, but they don't even use him that much. Landon Collins, Trey Apke are the two safeties. This is just one of the best matchups on the slate. I think it's second best for me overall. Third best. Josh Allen second. Then we got Kyler, and then we'll talk about Dak in a minute. But, it's just a great matchup. He's only $6,100. They're going to be favored. I don't care. I want to get some tournaments with him. Just that match is perfect. I want to get some Kyler Murray. Cash, tournaments, everything. Give me a stack from Kyler Murray to DeAndre Hopkins. Give me a stack from Kyler Murray to Christian Kirk. Those are probably the only two I want to. I don't ever really want to go to Larry Fitzgerald. And you can slip in Dan Arnold in there, and I don't even hate it. So, yeah, Kyler Murray, definitely just way, way, way too cheap. Definitely someone I want to get some exposure to this week. And I think he's my cash quarterback. I rarely, for me, locks and cash for McCaffrey, and that's it. And then if there's a really cheap running back in a solid matchup or a really cheap tight end or a really cheap receiver, then yeah, that too. But I don't ever say quarterback. Kyler Murray's a lock in cash this week. Jimmy G going up against the New York Jets. I don't think this is a spot I really want to get to. I don't really ever like to get to Jimmy G. It just doesn't offer you a ton of upside, except that one game against the Saints last year. But other than that, he doesn't really offer you a ton of upside. You look at the offense versus defense line matchup. It's a good matchup, but still just, Kendrick Bourne, Dante Pettis, and Mohamed Sanu are the receivers. They're not. They're down. If Brandon Ayuk misses again, Deebo Samuel's out at least 2 more weeks, so just not somewhere I want to get to. They are in a good match still against Pierre Desir, Bless One Austin, Brian Poole, but they actually grade out negatively against that. I didn't think there was going to be one receiving core that's going to grade out negatively against the Jets corners all year long, but the 49ers are doing that. George Kittle, though, he's George Kittle, absolute massive positive matchup. This is, I think, the best matchup for a tight end on the slate by a mile. Yeah. So, if you want to play George Kittle, I like George Kittle. If you're making a Garoppolo stack, I'm just doing Kittle and Jimmy. I don't want anyone else. McDougal, Marcus Mayer to safeties. It's going to grade out as a positive matchup for Jimmy, but nothing where I just really want to exploit it. Probably not going to go there. Dak Prescott against Atlanta. He's my best matchup on the slate, as I already said. He's $1,600, though, against Atlanta, so I do not want to go there for cash. But in tournaments, this is the game I want to stack this week. I think everyone's going to be on that as well. A ton of people are going to want to stack Cowboys-Falcons, and that's fine. I do too. When we go look at the offense versus defense line matchup, it's positive for Dallas. Not that positive, but it's positive. When we go look at the Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb are the receivers, one of the best receiving corps in the league. Going against rookie A.J. Terrell, who did not look good last week. Isaiah Oliver, who's trash. And Darquez Dennard in the slot, who's also not good. Very, very positive matchup for the Dallas Cowboys wide receivers. When we go look at Dalton Schultz is replacing Blake Jarwin, which kind of sucks. I can't use Jarwin in stacks anymore, but that's fine. I don't really want to go there as much. But Deion Jones, Olakun, and Leroy Reynolds are the linebackers. Then we have Keanu Neal and Ricardo Allen in the safeties. I mean, yeah, this screams great matchup for Dak. This game's going to be so high scoring. Yeah, they're favored, but they're going to be playing from behind. I mean, they're going to be a ton of scoring. They're not going to be playing from behind. There's just going to be a ton of scoring in this game. Somewhere I definitely want to go. It's Dak Prescott. I love this stack. I love just, you're going to stack, Dak Amari, running back Julio, Dak Gallup, running back Julio, always running back Ridley, always running back Gurley. You can even stack Dak and Zeke. It's just, there's so many good stack options here. You want to do a double stack, you want to go Dak, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, running back Julio, love it. So, just so many things you can do with this game, and I just want to attack Dak everywhere in tournaments. And then we'll close this out with Jared Goff going against Philly, who I think is also another underrated stack here. $1,500, not expensive. When we go look at the offensive versus defensive line matchup, overall it's going to be negative because that offensive line for the Rams sucks, but Robert Woods, Josh Reynolds, Cooper Kupp are the receivers going against Darius Slay, overrated, Avonte Maddox, and Nikhil Roby-Coleman in the slot. It's going to be a positive matchup for the wide receivers for Jared Goff. Then we have Tyler Higbee as tight end going against Nathan Jerry, Duke Riley, TJ Edwards. That's going to be a positive matchup for him. Jalen Mills and Rodney McLeod are safeties, another positive matchup for the receivers. And this ends up being one of the most positive matchups on the slate for me. They're slightly favored over Philly. It's going to be a very close game. I've been talking up Jared Goff a lot this offseason. I think he's going to be better this year in his offense, especially no Gurley. And this is a spot where the running game is not going to really succeed that well because the run defense for Philly is very good, but the pass defense isn't. You attack Philly in the air, and I think this is a spot where they can. So definitely like going to some Jared Goff stats. If you want to play him in cash, I don't even hate it either. I think he's a very cash viable quarterback. I've already said I'm going to Kyler, but if you want to play Goff in cash, I don't hate it. But yeah, I think that's really all I got to say on this slate. Thank you guys so much for checking this out. Make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, turn on the notification bell. If you want to subscribe to the Patreon or follow me on social media, I'll put the links below. But thanks so much for watching, guys. I know this is a little bit of a long video. We got the running backs coming out a little bit later, so be sure to check out that as well. Thank you guys so much.